What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another Star Wars podcast, Book of Boba Fett breakdown. It gets weirder and weirder to say that.
Yeah, it doesn't sound right, does it?
No, Book of Star Wars breakdown.
The Star Wars breakdown.
I'm your host, Melissa.
And I'm Matt, and today we're going to be talking about Book of Boba Fett Season 1, Episode 6, directed by Dave Filoni. We just got to jump in because, holy moly, what an episode.
I don't even like, should we read this? I mean, like, I should pull up the episode summary, shouldn't I? But like, guys, we're bursting. I mean, Matt and I have been texting each other all day. This has been like a huge day for Star Wars fans, and we are really feeling the hype right now. But guys, we're going to try to stick to our format. But if we get off track today, I'm so sorry because Matt and I are just so beyond excited right now. But our format is going to go Star Wars news. We'll get into the episode summary, talk about what we liked versus what we didn't like, if there's anything we didn't like about this episode at all, fan thoughts, our theories, and then the final verdict. So, Matt, with that being said, do you want to find the episode summary? And
sure, I'm looking for it right now.
So the writer for this episode, I know, was Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, and then Dave Filoni obviously directed. I'm sporting my shirt to prove it. But if Matt, if you want to read that episode summary, then we can get straight into the good stuff.
I guess we'll just say glorious diversion brings a stranger to town. Ooh, and I think that was on purpose. They tried to pull a fast one over us with that little description at the beginning, showing us Cobb Vanth. So let's jump in because I don't have any Star Wars news. I don't know if you have any Star Wars news. I don't think there's anything that's really come up in the last week. The only thing on my mind right now is this episode.
Star Wars news. Dave Filoni remains to be one of the best people to direct Star Wars.
The GOAT. Yeah, the GOAT.
He is the GOAT.
This guy has single-handedly brought Star Wars back to life and given it just such fresh energy. So that's the news we have. Other than that, I did not see. I truly did not see much for Star Wars news this week. Did you?
No, not at all. And I think everybody's waiting for the impending Kenobi trailer, which I did hear some rumors going around that that's either going to be out in May or June. Crossing fingers, hopefully that COVID doesn't delay it any further. But that's about the only thing that I can think of that I saw circulating.
Yeah. And that's a good thing to bring up because I mean, talk about up and coming stuff for Star Wars. Like this episode we just watched brought so much hype to these shows. There's so much they can do. My reaction video isn't up quite yet, but it'll be up by the time this episode comes out. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it yet. But I kind of talk about this. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many threads that they can follow. It opens up so many doors of what we can do. And it just, my mind was racing this whole episode of like, what's going to happen now in these other shows? So I think that is all the news we need to say is that Kenobi's going to be, we're going to get a preview for that. And it's just, how can we possibly wait for this new content? Like, it's going to be brutal once next week is over with. I mean, we'll have Bad Batch actually to tide us over for a while in Andor. And then Kenobi trailer out in May. And then we'll get Mandalorian season 3. But boy, oh boy, am I excited for that.
Yeah. I mean, especially after this episode, it just, the possibilities for Star Wars after watching this episode now are endless to me, because we got to start off with, I don't even know where to start, dude. I mean, do you just want to start from the beginning or do you just want to talk about whatever? Because I could just dive straight in right now.
Yeah, let's dive right in and let's start at the beginning.
Okay, so at the very beginning, we get the Pikes are back on Tatooine, hauling their spice, their drugs, because that's what they do best. And a lone figure steps out to stop them in, I think it's Mos Espa, right? No, it's Mos
Ugliani or something.
No, I don't know the exact town. There's so many Moss blanks. I don't know the exact name, but he steps out and the figure is, lo and behold, Cobb Vanth Refrigeration.
Nice.
I love this character. I think he is really cool. I think he is a creamy, dreamy man, and that doesn't hurt.
Pelgo, by the way. Sorry, Mos Pelgo.
Mos Pelgo.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry,
perfect. So no, that's totally fine. I'm glad you corrected me. So Cobb Vanth steps out to defend the citizens and the town of Mos Pelgo from the Pikes' tyranny of spice. And straight off the bat, I love Cobb Vanth. I like his character a lot. I think he's a lot of fun. What's that actor's name? I can never remember.
Danny Cordray from The Office is how I remember him.
Yeah, hot Danny Cordray.
No, it's not Timothy Oliphant.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I should have known that. I really like his character a lot. I thought he was a lot of fun in The Mandalorian season 2, the beginning of season 2. I really like this character a lot. So I love that they brought him back. The Western vibes in this episode were immaculate, and you can just see Dave Filoni's love for old Western and samurai films. And so I really loved how that came into play. I love that they brought Cobb Vanth back because like you have these characters there. Why not utilize them? Why not use them to further the story? So I was a big fan of the fact that they brought him in and that little intro and how he comes into play later in the episode. Spoiler alert, I don't think he's dead.
Yeah,
But let's get into the meat and juice of this episode, which is Mando going to whatever planet that was. I'm not sure.
yeah,
It's
I don't
like
know either. I was
Spartan brand Endor. I don't really know. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really know what that planet was, but Mando goes to the planet to visit his son because he misses his little baby boy. And lo and behold, he doesn't find Grogu right away, but we see that Luke Skywalker has just begun the early stages of Grogu's training. And I could gush about this, but I do want to give you a chance to speak. So why don't you take us into this scene on this planet with Din and Luke, and just feel free to jump into whatever, Matt, because
Right. So I think you set up the episode well. We start with a little misdirection at the beginning because it's a stranger comes to town. We're like, oh, it's Cobb Vanth because he's back. We're like, oh, the stranger,
Mhm.
But lo and behold, that is not the case, as we'll talk about in a bit. They are talking about someone else who I will not name his name yet, but I'm excited to talk about him. So I totally agree with you. The Western vibe here is amazing. The setup is awesome. You really get the sheriff in town kind of vibe from Cobb Vanth. I agree with you. He's a very good character. Adds a very nice dimension to Star Wars. Very unique character as well. He's still a little bit of a bad boy, but not like too much of like a Han. He's kind of his own unique thing. So I thought that was cool, and I totally agree with you there. Great to see the Pikes being Pikes and Cobb Vanth wasting their spice, which I thought was extremely wasteful. That spice could go to good use, but fine. And yeah, we get to this planet, and I mean, they did not waste any time.
No.
They get on this planet, and you see R2, which that enough for me is like, oh hell yeah, like we get Luke. And I didn't know if I could really believe it. I'm like, are we just going to see him for a second? Is he not home? Is he out fishing somewhere? I don't know. But then you see his X-wing in the little creek there, and yeah, we lay our eyes upon Luke Skywalker. Now I got to tell you what about this: the CGI progression from season 2 of Mandalorian to now is absolutely unbelievable. I thought it was a real actor. I thought it was like I couldn't get over it. So it's like we talked about with Mando season 2, how they hired Shamook, the guy who does all the deep fakes and fixed them. He's working on that now. I got to give a shout out to that guy. If you're watching this, Shamook, if that's how you say your YouTube name, you're incredible. Like that whole team, the way they were able to pull that off, and like the voice got better. It looks real. It's crazy. And there was so much Luke in there too. It wasn't just like for a couple brief moments like we had at the end of Mando season 2, as good as that was. This was like you'd think 5 years went by in the terms of the technology that they've used to make this happen. So I was just absolutely blown away by that. I mean, the excitement of having Luke is good enough. And I didn't know if they were going to potentially recast him as someone else. The tension's killing me. But no, they're doing the deepfake thing, which works. It works, which is like that's such a risky move, but they did it. So I love that. And then obviously my son, my baby boy, little Grogu. Oh, my little baby.
I have him here.
He's right there, and we finally get to see him again, which I didn't know was going to happen. I was a little skeptical, but boy, did they do it, and they did it fantastically. So I thought this opening scene and sequence with Luke and Grogu, we get a training scene here, which is stunningly awesome. Very well done again. I knew that we'd get a Grogu training scene at some point. I didn't think it'd probably be until Mando season 3. if Grogu was going to be in it, which was confirmed in the last episode. But the way they did it was like so well done. It's easy to make those things look clunky, with a puppet and like
Yeah,
you're
for
doing
sure.
the visual effects and whatnot. But I thought it was so well done. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, that could have been it. That could have been it could have been 2 minutes of that scene of Luke and Grogu just hanging out, force throwing frogs around. But Mando's taking a little nap near R2, and then we get Ahsoka just popping up out of the bushes. Like, I was speechless. Like, absolutely speechless to get that. I mean, I guess it makes sense because that's Filoni's character, so I guess I should have suspected that more. But I was blown away by that. And the scenes of her and Luke standing next to one another were just like, mwah, perfect. Like, it was perfectly done. I thought Luke in here was great, but Ahsoka's cameo was perfect. They didn't overdo it. Her and Luke together was great. Her role was it was masterfully put in there. What did you think about that?
Oh my, where do you start? Like I got to the end of my reaction video, Matt, and I was like, what am I supposed to say? Because you're so dumbfounded and in awe of what's happening. You truly can't believe it because you see it with your eyes, but your brain is going, this isn't real. This isn't real. This isn't real. Straight off the bat, I also want to give a huge shout out to Shamook. Unbelievable CGI. In fact, it was so scary good to the point where I was sitting there and I was like, they can do anything now. You want to bring back Carrie Fisher as Leia? That's entirely possible. You want to slap Harrison Ford's face onto Alden What's-His face for Solo? You could do that now if you wanted to.
I was just thinking about that. Sorry, just to stop you real quick. That's one of my major notes that I thought, and we can talk about this more in theories, but they just opened up the door with so much more with that. And Han was the first thing that came to mind for me because I'm like, we never got that reunion that we wanted between Luke and Han. They're giving us everything we want and what we need and where we know the story needs to go. So I think Luke and Leia is totally on the table. Sorry, I just had to say that.
No. And
we can talk about that more in like the theories part of things, but like that was one of my major notes that I wrote down. I was like, oh my gosh, Han, like this is totally possible now.
No, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I want to talk about this stuff, like the technology. It's just like you said, it's like the difference between like something that happened 5 years ago to now. The Mandalorian season 2 finale came out 2020, 1 year ago, a little over a year ago, like not quite over a year ago. But the difference in the way that Luke emotes at his facial expressions and how he speaks and the way he moves his head to respond to Ahsoka, I was like, I cannot believe this is actually happening because it's so believable. And there's like, sure, there's a couple things you look at and you're like, all right, like that doesn't look like a normal human expression, but it was done so masterfully to the point where it scares me that we can actually bring people, back from the dead now to do stuff like that. And it's insane. So straight off the bat, that was a huge like talking point for the episode for me personally, because I was just in complete awe. And you'll see this in my reaction video, guys. I'm just like screaming. I'm like, that looks unreal. So Shamook, if you happen to see this, you're amazing, man. And your work is, God, I can't even express how appreciated
it so
is.
Much.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like and so that like I'm never gonna get over that and how masterfully that was done. So props to Lucasfilm and Shamook and the entire team. You guys crushed it, and I can clearly see that's where all of the budget went. And it was great, and I just absolutely loved it. I honestly, Matt, I can't believe, like just like how you mentioned a few minutes ago, we got a Grogu training sequence, and they didn't just like give us a little bite and run away. We got like half of an episode of training with Luke and Grogu, and I was just in awe of like how much time we were able to spend with them, like how they're training with the frogs. And something that I really liked about Luke training Grogu with the frogs is, initially Grogu's not paying attention and Luke's like, Grogu, and because Grogu wants to eat his food. But then Luke like lifts all of the frogs with the Force. And in this kind of way, and I say this in my reaction video, I felt like it's very much like a teacher taking a subject and then translating it to the student in a way that they would understand.
Yeah,
And I felt
totally.
like Luke was making the Jedi teaching specific to Grogu in a way that Grogu could understand. And so I really appreciated that. And then, when they go for a walk together and Luke is like force hopping Grogu.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Like a frog. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, I like to think like that's how Luke was tying it all together for Grogu.
Yeah.
And then we get Master Yoda mention from Luke, and he says, my Jedi teacher once told me size matters not. And he
Yeah.
gets down to Grogu's level, and he said, do you remember where you came from? Do you remember what that place was like? Do you remember your home? And he puts his hand on his head, and we get a flashback to Order 66. Now, I have to talk about this scene. What was your initial impression? Did you think we were going to get that? Like, what were you feeling in that moment? Because obviously we were already overwhelmed with Luke and Grogu, but when that Order 66 flashback came on, give me your impression of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think someone put it on Reddit, put it nicely. They're like, if Dave Filoni's involved with something Star Wars and doesn't put an mention of Order 66 in there, then he will explode. And I'm like, very true. It just rips open that scab every time.
So true.
I
Very
mean, but it was
Dave.
awesome, and it was again so masterfully done. Where it was, he gives us just a little bit of that nugget where we see the clone troopers are about to get Grogu, and he gets whisked away. And that's going to be another main plot point of later on. That's another thread we can follow of who helped him escape. How did he get out of there?
And further to that, who wiped Grogu's memory? Because Ahsoka mentions in The Mandalorian that Grogu's memory goes dark. If you remember
Right.
that.
Well, maybe it's like
So
a painful thing,
yeah.
Maybe it's something he doesn't want to remember, and Luke's just ripping that scab open. You will remember. But I love that. I mean, I'm a sucker for Order 66 stuff, just because it's so dark. But it was awesome just to see that one little bit right there. We didn't need any more than that. You get to see the 501st coming in, blasting through the Jedi Temple, and poor little Grogu escapes somehow. So I think that was just kind of setting up another plot thread that we can explore later on in Mando season 3, which just gets me super stoked. The other thing, and you kind of mentioned this with the training sequence with Grogu, is like the parallels to Empire Strikes Back and
Yeah.
everything there. Luke's got little baby Yoda on his back. He's flipping around with him, teaching him the same thing. Do or do not, there is no try, that kind of stuff. Was just fantastic. So like they took so much thought and put so much care into writing the dialogue for this. It all felt so natural too. They didn't try to force it in there. No pun intended. They just kind of let it naturally insert itself into the episode, which just worked so beautifully. And the cinematography in these sequences too was just fantastic, and it just breathed really nicely. The whole time those scenes are going on, and you might feel the same way. You're like, oh my gosh, is it going to end soon? Like, do we only get 30 seconds? Do we get a minute? How long is it? And it just kind of took its time, and it didn't rush through anything, and it gave the fan service that we all wanted to see. So, in regards to that scene, and I already mentioned the Ahsoka cameo as well, it just flowed very, very nicely. And I didn't know how we were going to top last week's episode, but this like blows it out of the water. But I wanted to kind of go over to you and see what were your thoughts on, Ahsoka showing up, because I wasn't really expecting that, honestly. Like I knew it was a possibility, but I was like, they're not going to give us that much, they're not going to throw everything in. But like, what did you think of that when you see her for the first time?
Oh man. So I think something I've always thought about and theorized about since I was 14 years old, because I was 14 when the Clone Wars first came out, and I'm now 27. And so I grew up with Ahsoka. I went through these experiences with her, and the fact that Ahsoka and Luke could hold a screen together was almost incomprehensible to me, because you see her with Din, and the first thing like that came to my mind was she would not be here unless she was here with Luke. And I was in such disbelief. And I keep saying this, but you guys go watch my reaction video. Like I literally go, what the hell? Ahsoka's here too? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I think I was really overwhelmed at first because I didn't expect more than just Luke, but truly I found it overwhelming. I never could have imagined, back in 2009, if you tell me, oh, well, in 10 years or so, 11 years from now, you're going to get a scene with Ahsoka and Luke in live action, I probably would have been like, absolutely not. Like my mind would have been blown. And
You'd have been
uh,
like, how? How is
no,
that
yeah.
gonna happen?
Well, it just, it was overwhelming for me. It was emotional for me because Ahsoka, there, you have two different parts of Anakin's life right there. You have his son, the one who redeemed him, brought him back to the light and loved him back into good. And then you have his Padawan, who was essentially his little sister, you know, someone he deeply cared for, would have sacrificed anything for. And to see those two worlds colliding and coming into one scene was emotionally overwhelming for me, to the point where I was like, I cannot comprehend that this is a real thing that's happening. The son of Anakin Skywalker is speaking to Anakin Skywalker's Padawan. And so to have the clash of those two worlds was absolutely surreal. I was confused as to like, how did they get to that point? Because you and I have been theorizing so much on this. We're like, does Ahsoka know that Anakin was redeemed? And if she doesn't, is that something that Luke would have to tell her? I'm honestly surprised that we seem to be at a point now where Luke and Ahsoka not only know each other, but Luke must have told Ahsoka about what happened to Vader. So that actually presented a lot of interesting questions, knowing that she's there as Luke is trying to rebuild the Jedi Order and how she's mentoring him, you know, appears to be mentoring him in a lot of ways. You know, there's a scene when they're standing by the river and Luke expresses doubt and he's like, what should I do? And Ahsoka looks at him and she smiles and she says, trust your instincts. And you know, and then she even has a scene right before that where she looks at Luke and smiles and she goes, you're so much like your father. I was like, oh my God, like we have the two worlds of Anakin Skywalker clashing here. What an emotional, powerful moment, not just for the characters, but for the audience. And in a sequence that signifies the rebirth of the Jedi through Grogu. Like, what a
Yeah.
powerful, amazing thing. Like, how did you feel about that? Because honestly, the best way I can put it is I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, it's great storytelling, right? Like, and that's the other thing I say in my reaction videos. Like, wow, this is such good storytelling. Like, they tied this in such a natural way, and I think you're totally right. Your point about Luke and Ahsoka being in this on the screen at the same time, it's like crazy. You're like, no way. And by the way, if I doubt this is even the case, but if anyone's new to our show and hasn't watched before, like, go watch Clone Wars. If you're not getting this, the whole these connections we're making with like Ahsoka, like you get a lot of gaps that are filled in there, which really deepens Anakin's character and therefore deepens, you know, Luke and everyone else. So Ahsoka's Anakin's Padawan and Luke is Anakin's son. And like you get to see these things. And the other thing I was thinking about was just as Anakin and his actions with storming the Jedi Temple traumatized Grogu, his son is now kind of healing those wounds and helping him past that.
Oh,
You know
right.
what I mean? Which I thought was like a
Yeah.
really cool kind of connection as well, because we get both those things. And I think that might be a reason why they put in just the glimpse of the Order 66 is because it gives us that connection to Anakin, which, by the way, side note, I would have loved to see if we just at least saw a blue lightsaber and a hooded figure in the back as Anakin, just for a split second for Order 66. I think that would have made the scene hit a little bit harder. Not complaining, I'm just saying I think
Yeah.
it would have definitely had more gravitas if that was the case. But like, I mean, back to the Ahsoka thing.
Can I pick your brain for a minute? I'm so sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but like you recently finished the Clone Wars over a year ago for the first time. So having, and you had knowledge prior to that of Ahsoka and all those worlds, but like as somebody who like hadn't really explored her and then explored her story recently and then getting into this and seeing like Ahsoka and Luke, like how did that impact you and make you feel
Well,
in
it
your
definitely feels like,
experience?
yeah, it feels like a more complete journey because I started Clone Wars in 2019, I think is when I started it. And then I finished it like, oh, I started end of 2019 and I finished it beginning of 2020 once once the COVID monster hit. And so it feels. I was actually thinking about this today. It feels really complete because I felt like I watched it at the perfect time, right when we're getting all this Star Wars content coming out, where that character actually means something a lot more to me. And I'm glad that you and I had talked about this, and you told me to watch Clone Wars because if I hadn't done that, it wouldn't have had that much of a. It wouldn't have resonated as much with me when we get to see Ahsoka for the first time in Mandalorian season 2, and then like now seeing her in Book of Boba Fett or Book of Star Wars, whatever the show actually is.
Which we need to
And
talk about.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And we'll get to that. But I mean, I lost my mind when we saw her on screen, and it was just so well done. And I do wish we would get to see them talk a little bit for the first time, and I would imagine we will get that kind of scene in the Ahsoka show because you're going to need to flesh that out more with flashbacks and long storytelling and an actual conversation about it, which I don't think would necessarily be appropriate for this episode because they were fitting a lot in. I still have hope that we're going to see them have that conversation with Luke telling her about how he was able to turn him towards the end. Because I think that's an important conversation for both characters, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. And
Um,
I feel the same way. You know, like you get in there. My first impression actually, dude, was what is Ahsoka doing here? You know, and then I realized halfway through the episode, I was like, oh, not only is she the mentor figure, but you also kind of need her to be the one to stop Din
yeah, for
from
sure. And you know what?
going to see Grogu
Right.
instead of Luke, because that makes more sense given their conversation in The Mandalorian.
Right. 100%. And that's a good point to bring up because we haven't mentioned Din yet, but like I was so bummed. I'm like, I just want the reunion to happen so bad. But like with her dialogue, it was so well written to like convincing him as to why to not go see him, right? Because Din wants what's best for him. We don't know what Grogu wants yet, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But her dialogue there was just perfectly written. The other thing I wanted to bring up was we got a lot of cameos in the show already, right? So within the first couple minutes, we get R2, we get Luke Skywalker, we get Grogu, and we get Ahsoka. But you know what the best cameo of the entire episode was? Boba
Oh,
Fett. Boba Fett cameoing for half of a second in his own show. What a cameo it was. We got Boba Fett in the show. Wow.
God. God, I so wish that wasn't true. But it is.
But
Oh,
it
how
is.
sad. How sad is it that we've gotten to that point? Oh my
It's
gosh.
fine. I
And
mean,
like
honestly, like this, the storytelling in this was necessary. I don't know why they did it the way they did it, especially looking back on the season as a whole. It feels like two different shows now. But at least we got a little bit. At least we had a couple minutes of him in or a couple seconds of him in this episode.
oh my gosh, goodness me. Like you're totally right. You're totally completely right. In fact, in that scene where he cameos for a few seconds at the end, where Fennec is giving that whole monologue about the plot that everybody knows about, I was thinking, why can't Boba say these lines? Like, why
Yeah,
isn't Boba delivering these lines in this scene? Like, why is Fennec speaking it for him? Because all he did is he stood there, he turned, he looks at Din, and he just gives him like a nod. And that was the equivalent of what he did
yeah.
in this episode. So
He had as many lines as Black Croissant. So
yep.
that was strange.
But before we get back into that, let's go back and talk about Din's characterization for a second, because
Sure.
I think deep down everybody knew that Din was not going to get to see Grogu, because as we've seen and as they talked about in the last episode, the Armorer and Din talk a lot about like Jedi foregoing attachment and how like the Mandalorian creed is all about attachment. And interestingly enough, you know, Ahsoka stops Din because she's like, your attachment to him will hurt him more if you go up and say hi, because then it'll make it harder for him to let you go. And then even Luke tells Grogu, he's like, you cannot do this. You cannot be a Jedi unless you forego your attachment to Din, which I think is really interesting because as we've been shown in the prequels and as George Lucas has expressed, attachment is the problem, not the love side of things. So it's okay to love someone. So like Anakin loving Padme, for example. Anakin loves Padme. That's not a bad thing, but his attachment to her, his fear of losing her is eventually what brings him to his downfall, because he was so afraid to lose her that in doing so, he committed all these heinous crimes and lost everything.
Right.
So the idea of attachment in this episode was fascinating to me because I always thought that Luke in the original trilogy was the best example of a Jedi learning to love and loving without it letting that emotion like consume them, because that's how he saves Vader at the
Yeah.
end of the day. He saves Vader because he loves his father, he wants to help him, but he doesn't allow that, attachment to consume him. So I thought that there was like an interesting dialogue on attachment and emotion. And essentially that Grogu having to make a choice
Yeah.
between these two things. So what were your impressions of that? Just like the whole concept of attachment, because they seem to talk about it a lot in this episode, and
Yeah, they
I'd like to
do.
dig in that.
I think my theory on it is more of like the reason why Jedi don't want the attachment necessarily when you're training is not because of the attachment itself. It's the fear of losing someone that you love.
Hmm.
That's what turned Anakin, because it's fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate and suffering.
Hmm.
So I never totally agreed with the you can't have the attachment thing. You know, yes, it would make Grogu sadder potentially, but there's a lot of ways in which the Jedi are flawed, as we see in the prequels, and I think that's one of them. You deprive people of this stuff. I mean, look what happened to Anakin. Anakin was afraid of losing his mother, but would he have had that fear if he knew that she was safe somewhere, right? Like, who knows? Same thing with Padme. If they would have indulged him a little bit, or if he was able to, if they weren't so dogmatic in their teachings and their ways, this all could have been prevented. You know, because part of the point of the prequels, part of the point of the prequels was to showcase the fall of the Jedi, like how the goodness isn't so good in some cases. And I think this is one way that highlights that. And you can tell Luke's kind of struggling with it because he's not a full Jedi, really. I mean, he is, but he hasn't had guidance in a while. Really, the only person he can look up to for guidance is Ahsoka, and so he's looking to her for guidance as to like how can I grow this in a Jedi Order again? How do I do this correctly? And so I just think it's interesting how we get to see kind of the birth of all that and his journey through how do I teach this child because it's my first student, and how do I do it in the right way? So you can I got the feeling that you could that he was kind of struggling with how to do it, and because he wants to start off on the right foot again, so he doesn't fall down the wrong path.
Interesting that you say that, because then in contrast, if you look at Ahsoka, I was a little bit surprised at her reaction at telling Din to let Grogu go, because like if you look at Ahsoka's story, she leaves the Jedi Order because they were hypocrites in a lot of ways. She got blamed for something that she didn't do. She said she didn't do it. The Jedi didn't believe her. They expelled her, then found out the truth. And then Mace Windu tried to pull some BS by saying it was like her great trial or whatever, and
Yeah.
then invited her back into the Order. So she's like, hi, yeah, this isn't really for me. Peace out.
Yeah.
So I thought Ahsoka always kind of had a better grip on the like attachment not being a bad thing. But in this episode, she seemed very like, no, attachment is bad. And it's
Yeah.
almost like maybe she's in a phase where she has to grow and get past that. And that's when she turns into Ahsoka the White in Star Wars Rebels. But I thought her characterization on that was really interesting, how she seemed to be like, yeah, no attachment, no attachment. But she was very compassionate towards Din, which I liked. But I thought her take on it was super interesting because Luke's struggle
Right.
makes more sense to me. You know,
Well, isn't she a gray anyways?
Gray Jedi aren't like a canon thing anymore. Like that's been wiped. Like a Gray Jedi has been canon. I think she's just a light side Force user, but she does not identify as a Jedi because she left the Order.
Even if she's not a Jedi, like you think you're right. Like, why does she subscribe to these ways and teach? Like, why isn't she just like do it the way you want to do it? Teach them the best way you know how. You know, becoming a Jedi. Yeah, it technically means one thing, but you can also teach him the best way you know how, and she could help Luke, you know, be a mentor. And I hope we get more scenes with them too of her kind of guiding him, because I think that would help, you know, complete the story a little bit.
Yeah, I do too. And I am really interested in Luke's struggle. I think Luke's really struggling with the idea of attachment as well. But as I was watching Luke in this episode, I kept thinking about Qui-Gon. I was like, man, he's got a lot of Qui-Gon Jinn qualities. And it would just be kind of interesting to see Luke evolve into that kind of man, you know, because he's still in the early stages. It's still very much trial and error. Grogu is his first student. He's not going to know how to do this right away. He's got a lot to learn, but his vibes are very reminiscent of Qui-Gon, and just that kind of like understanding that attachment, not allowing it to consume you, but entrusting your entire self to the Force in that very religious way. So I'm fascinated by how they're going to do the attachment story and how they develop that, because I think that's going to be a big focus of Ahsoka's show. I feel like.
I think so too, and I think there's going to be a lot more great scenes like this in Ahsoka. The dynamic there was great, the dialogue, everything about that was just so well done. I need to watch the episode again, like immediately, which I'll probably do tonight, because there's a lot to unpack there, you know.
So much, and I've seen the episode twice, and I'm sure I'll catch things after we watch this, and I'll be mad that I didn't mention them on the podcast. Yeah. But
well, there's so much to mention, right? Like during the whole time you're watching it, there's so much going through your head, like. I'm trying to watch the episode while at the same time react to like what I'm thinking in my head, but my mind's going so fast as I'm watching it. I was having a tough time, and you can definitely see that on my reaction video, at least, where I'm sitting there. I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, there's so much happening right now, and so I'm gonna feel the same way when we're done. I'm like, I forgot to mention that other thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I honestly, like, this episode felt very Dave Filoni. Like, it had his touch to it. Like, his episodes of the Clone Wars always have a very specific feel to them. He does a lot of character driven moments, a lot of the slow scenes to kind of like give you the characters' dialogue and get into their heads. And I can't explain this episode other than it being pure Dave Filoni. Like, it just felt like a love letter to Star Wars, but it felt very careful and very respectful. And it just felt like he was pouring his passion into it. And I don't really know how to explain it other than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He did a fantastic job. It was again super Star Warsy. There's no other way to put it. Like it just fits so nicely into everything. This is like this is one of those episodes you can pull out, and
Mm-hmm.
watch, and it stands on its own. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's excellent. And there's going to be a watching order for Star Wars TV. Like there's just like there's a watching order for the movies. There's gonna be an established. All right, here's the episodes to watch. And it's like that with Clone Wars. Like, oh, you can watch
Mm-hmm.
this one, skip that one, skip that one, watch this arc. It's really good, and then skip these. It's gonna be the same thing with Mando and Book of Boba Fett, where you kind of take them and write. All right, this episode from this season, these episodes from this season, this episode that we just watched. Like, definitely watch that. Like it's gonna age very well. I think in terms of how it fits in canon with everything else that we've seen so far.
And it
Which
was honest, like well said on all of that. But I was also just going to add to that, like it just blends two worlds of generational fans together so well. The
yeah, and
1977 fans, and then you get the 2008 Clone Wars fans, and the pre. Wow.
yeah, and you know what? I feel bad for people who haven't experienced Star Wars recently. If there is anyone left, like a part of the fun of all this is the waiting for it. That's what makes these returns so meaningful. That's what makes the storytelling so good is the wait. And if you haven't watched Star Wars until you just start watching them this year, right? And you watch all the movies and then you kind of go through it and then it doesn't have the same effect because you haven't
Mm-hmm.
waited as long. Like when Phantom Menace came out, you're like, oh my gosh, we get to see young Obi-Wan. That's crazy. Now you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, young Obi-Wan. Of course. Yeah, we've seen him before. But in that moment, it was like, oh my gosh, Qui-Gon Jinn, this new character. Darth Maul, oh my gosh, this new character. And then they build upon him. And then with Mando season 2, that reveal is like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen this character Luke in forever. So I can't wait. Like, this is amazing. But like, if you just started watching Star Wars like this year or last year, I don't think it's necessarily going to have that same effect. Because you get to watch it immediately after. You can binge everything, and see those characters you love anytime you want. But I just think the waiting element made these cameos and appearances so much better. And that whole first half of the episode was just perfectly done, in my opinion.
I concur. I was very fulfilled by what I saw, and just all the homage and respect paid to the character of Luke Skywalker. Like that means a lot to me. I feel like with each thing that I see from Dave, I just feel very secure in knowing that Star Wars is in good hands. So all I have to
Totally.
say is that first half of the episode made me ask so many questions about Luke and Ahsoka, and like I
Oh yeah.
need to know how they met. What conversations have they had? How much do each of them know? Like the line, I can't stop thinking about the line where Ahsoka's like, "You're so much like your father," and Luke just gives her this look, and I'm like, I can't. I need Dave, what are you doing? And I know what he's doing, and it's making you want more. But I'd have to say that like my biggest beef with the episode is all the unanswered questions that it
Yeah.
posed. But if it's posing all those unanswered questions, then the episode is doing a good job, I think.
I think so too.
Um,
It was just the right amount as well. So it's like you have these questions, but I trust in the makers of these TV shows now that they're going to answer those questions. They're not going to leave you on a cliff. They're doing it the right way.
and they're honestly not to be that person, but they're doing it with respect.
Yes. Leading with respect.
like I don't know, the sequel trilogy ruled with fear. They intend to rule with respect. They intend to make movies with
That
respect.
line's going to keep coming back.
The sequel trilogy made movies with fear. Dave Filoni
Yes.
will make movies with respect. But we need to get past this because we have the second half of the episode, which I cried, dude.
Yes.
Like you will watch my reaction video and I cried, but is there anything you want to say before we get into the very exciting second half?
No, that's it. The second half starts off really strong. All I want to say is we get a cameo from Boba Fett, and that was a great cameo, and I'm glad glad we saw him. So that was another really, really good cameo that I think a lot of people are going to gloss over, but it was good to see him. But that leads us into pretty, not necessarily surprising, but much needed
Did I
cameo.
not say this? Did I not say this?
You said this.
I said this. Can I say it?
You can say it.
Cad Bane.
He's back. The bad boy of the Star Wars universe.
Holy shit.
What an entrance.
Oh my God. Guys, I can't express this. You need to watch our reaction videos if you want to get our honest takes on this. I was like in the middle of commenting on something about Cobb Vanth, and then you see the chimes dangling, and there's a figure in the distance walking forward, covered in the sand and the wind. And I was like, holy shit, that is Cad Bane. Don't mess with me, but that's Cad Bane. And it kept processing. The closer the figure got, I went, oh my God. And I actually teared up a little bit, because I've been saying this from like day one back on our Bad Batch series. I'm like, if Cad Bane shows up in Book of Boba Fett, that's it. The show is made for me.
He made the whole show, and you and I have been talking about this. Like, I had chills. Like, I haven't had chills in an episode of a TV show in a long time. Not since Luke at least showed up in Mando 2, but like when I saw him as an R2, I was like, oh my gosh. And then you see him walking through. It's what an entrance. It was masterfully done. Masterfully, because it kind of came at an unexpected time. You know, Mando's talking to Cobb. You think you're going to call this meeting? A little misdirection here. And then out in the distance, I said the same thing. I'm like, oh, I'm in the middle of talking, and I'm just like, oh. I was stunned, like just stunned at that. But also, like, I was kind of expecting, I just didn't know what to say. I'm like, I want to shut up, but like my brain, I want to theorize on so many different things. And boy, did it translate beautifully to live action. I thought they did such a good job, and that's not an easy character to translate to live action. I mean, they did a great job with Ahsoka. I thought that's really hard. But Cad Bane, you and I have been talking about this since a Bad Batch breakdown. Like, when they do bring him in live action, which we knew was inevitable, it was going to happen at some point. He's too good of a character. How are they going to do it? And it did not disappoint. And they got the original voice actor to do his voice, which...
Did I not say this? Yes. I said this. I said they're going to get Corey Burton.
Yes. So shout out Corey Burton. Like, he's amazing. And they capture the essence of him so well. It's hard to translate that stuff from animation to live action to get the same essence of the person in the character. It's not an easy thing to do. You don't just like throw someone in makeup and that's it. Like, you got to have him walk a certain way, talk a certain way, act a certain way. He has his hat down. They don't reveal his face for a while. That's the other thing. Which was like, I still couldn't believe it. I'm watching it. I'm like, come on, just show his face so I knew it's real. And then he looks up and you see those big, beady red eyes and his gangly teeth. And you're like, there he is, iconic character with that evil voice and look.
Suave, sexy Cad Bane.
Crinkly, wrinkly Cad Bane.
Sandpaper hands Cad Bane.
Sandpaper hands Cad Bane, doing what Cad Bane does, being a naughty little boy, working for the Pikes. So I think a couple things here. One, amazing Western showdown. This goes back to the beginning with what we were talking about. Star Wars is a Western. It's a space Western. Everyone knows that.
Mm-hmm.
They lean into that a lot, which I love. I don't necessarily think the sequels did an amazing job of that. There's some elements of them that it kind of did, but I don't think you got the feeling as much as when you have Dave Filoni involved in these things, where he gets the essence of what Star Wars is. And they have the Lone Rider from the out wearing his hat, and he's walking through the sand. I don't know. Speeders don't make sense to him for some reason. He decides to walk across the whole desert to get here.
Because he can, because he's a badass. This is Cad Bane, dude.
But the people are walking out on the street. They're watching. It's like an old Western showdown, you know, a shootout at high noon kind of thing. And I love Westerns too. I love that stuff. And just if there was a better way to introduce a character, I don't know what it would be, because this is so highly anticipated to see this guy come from animation to live action, and they did it so well. And it was just, the tension was brought up perfectly. The music, I was thrilled about it. What were your initial feelings?
Disbelief, because your mind is going, that's Cad Bane, but your mouth's going, that's not Cad Bane. There's no, this is too fast. This is too fast. But the closer he got, the more the more emotional I got. Like, honestly, I honestly was brought to tears. I was half laughing, half crying. Like, I was like, I can't believe this. I wanted this. I didn't think we'd get this. and Cad Bane's honestly up there with like my top 10 favorite Star Wars characters, like the badassery, the sheer not giving an F, like
Yeah.
like he walks into a room and he takes control and he's not afraid of the Jedi. He can kick their ass. And honestly, it's like in some scenes in the Clone Wars, you watch Cad Bane and you're like, I want him to win, genuinely, truly, I want him to win because he's that much of a badass and he deserves it. And he's really, I think he's extremely likable. And I really think that he has earned his place as part of like the best Star Wars characters of all time. Like there was a point where I was like, Cad Bane is what everybody thinks Boba Fett is, like, and I honestly, like, I'm sorry, guys, like, that's my opinion. I think Cad Bane is what everybody wants Boba Fett to be. So to have him walk across that screen in the most badass way, stand up to Cobb Vanth, and he's like, child's play. Like, essentially, he like comes in, and you're like, okay, I like Cobb Vanth, but I want Cad Bane to win because of the sheer power that he is exuberating right now.
Yes. And also the mention to Boba Fett too there as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Which I want to add one more thing and then we'll get into this inevitable showdown between him and Boba, which we have to talk about.
Yeah.
But the CG on Cad Bane combined with what I think were also prosthetics, like the teeth, the animation on Cad Bane's face, I can't imagine is easy to do because the dude doesn't have a nose, and the nose on somebody's face is one of the most like important parts to creating a facial expression. And so I was really impressed that they were able to make Cad Bane emote as well as he did in that scene, because he's talking and he's moving and I'm like, this feels so Cad Bane. And don't get me wrong, there were a couple things that like fell off, that felt weird, but I really don't care about them as much because I'm just thrilled to have Cad Bane.
Yeah.
But I thought the animation and the effects done on him were ridiculously good, but I can't describe what that did to me. To have him come into a live action show in the most badass way, win the shootout like we all thought he was going to win, was surreal. And I can't even express how much I loved it and how much joy that brought me. Like, there are no words.
Cobb Vanth did not stand a chance.
Oh, no, he was totally screwed. I went on YouTube today and I watched a couple people's reaction videos and all of them say the same thing. They're like, oh, he's screwed. He's screwed. Cad Bane's going to shoot him out, which, by the way, let's talk about this. I don't think Cobb Vanth is dead. I think
no. So he obviously gets shot. Cad Bane blasts the deputy about 9 times. Brutal. Which, God, I love that. Like they're a little gritty with this stuff, and I think that's so important to make the message get across more. You can't have everything be so like vanilla, right? You got to have those moments that are like, he just blasted that guy, and then he blasts Cad Bane. But it's if you notice this, when he blasts Cobb Vanth, he hits him in the shoulder, very much like he does to Hunter, and they fall the same way. It's the exact same. He blasts him right in the shoulder. I definitely don't think he's dead. I think he either has armor on under it, or a shoulder shot's not going to kill you, right?
Right.
But there was so many parallels to that Bad Batch episode, and that was 100% done on purpose. Dave Filoni, love you, nice job. But I agree with you. I don't think he's dead.
No, there's no way, because look at how much they focused on the Marshall's death.
Right, and he's a good character too. He's a good character.
Well, he was.
Yes, but he's gonna want to come back and help Mando. I think. I think that'd be too quick of an exit for him as a character.
What, Cobb Vanth?
Yeah, he's good energy, and it's just an interesting element to bring. So I don't think he's dead either. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was the reference to Boba Fett, like Cad Bane talking about Boba Fett. I just loved that. I'm like, oh God, I just eat this stuff up, talking about the Empire, how he's a brutal killer. Like, I'm like, yes, like this is the stuff we needed in the first couple episodes of Book of Boba Fett, was more character development, callbacks to the original trilogy, and like those little things make a big difference in my opinion. So I just loved like hearing Cad Bane talk, blasting them both like it's no problem, being like, hey, we're gonna run this town now, was just insanely good.
It's just unbelievable. I loved the speaking of the Boba Fett and Cad Bane setup. So I have just 2 trains of thought. My first train of thought is this episode in general reminded me a lot of old John Wayne films.
Yep.
I obviously Clint Eastwood, but I think the other person that people don't really think about as much is John Wayne. And I got major John Wayne vibes in this showdown with Cad Bane and Cobb Vanth and the Marshal. So that I really appreciate that. Side note, there was a lot of Kurosawa vibes in this episode too, which I know Dave Filoni is a huge fan of Kurosawa films. And so it was kind of nice to see that influence come back as well. But yeah, let's talk about the Cad Bane Boba Fett inevitable showdown, which I love. I'm excited. I am here for, but it does feel kind of random given that they didn't give a lot of setup for this in the other episodes, because they gave Boba Fett 4 episodes of character development, gave 1 episode to Din, and then basically gave 1 episode to Luke and Ahsoka. And so I have to say my criticism of that is, do I love the concept? Yes. Should they have introduced it earlier into the show? Yeah. To give it more weight.
And it doesn't take much. All it takes is like what Mando did, hinting to going to see Grogu. That's all it takes. Just a little mention here or there. And I think that brings up a good point, and it highlights what we talked about in the last episode, the problem with the show overall. Now, I'm not saying I hate the show. I'm just saying, looking at it from a critical eye, what are we watching here? Because the first couple episodes, and it even reinforces what you and I talked about having a linear story for Book of Boba Fett, for Boba Fett now, instead of jumping around, because now it feels even way more like segmented from one another. And I have a tough time remembering what happened in what episode, and like it just feels so long ago. It feels like 2 separate shows. And I think they could have had this reveal and hinted at it a lot better, and it would have made it like punch that much harder by just having like a tiny little reference to Cad Bane here or there, or just a little something, you know. But you know, in regards to the show as a whole, it doesn't really glue together super nicely from the first 4 episodes to now. But these last 2 have been some of the best Star Wars I've seen like in a while. Like, granted, the last episode is just a Mando season 1 episode. It was great, but like this one was like, there's so much in it. It was so nicely pulled together, but it's strange to me how there's no Boba Fett in it. And I think everyone would agree with that. Like, it's just weird. It's weird. The show's called The Book of Boba Fett, and we've seen Boba Fett for 10 seconds in the last 2 episodes.
I have a lot to say on this topic, but I guess where I'll start is, if your show is tight, and I think the title has everything to do with the content of your show. So think about the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. When I say the Clone Wars, what does your mind go to? The clones, right? You start thinking about, oh, the clones, the Jedi, the war that happened, the experiences that they have, the people that they lost, how they're trying to navigate the politics. If I say Star Wars Rebels, you think, oh, it's about the rebellion and the rebels learning to form themselves and fight back. If I say the Book of Boba Fett, you think the show is going to be about Boba Fett. Right. They're jumping around a lot and focusing on different characters. Now, this is not to say that these other characters, such as Din Djarin or, you know, like Grogu, would not impact Boba Fett's story at all. In fact, they can, and they have impacted Boba Fett's story. Din and Boba's stories are very interconnected. They weave together. The problem is in the case of Clone Wars. Clone Wars is a big title that could encompass anything, and it did. It would jump from Ventress to Cad Bane to Obi-Wan's story with Satine to Anakin and Ahsoka and their dynamic and the Mortis arc to back to Cad Bane. They were able to tell a wide variety of stories because the title was The Clone Wars. And it wasn't limited to one specific character, and they could explore all of these different story threads that made up the Clone Wars. Yeah. In the Book of Boba Fett, they're saying it is the book of Boba Fett, a character that you know about, but we're going to learn more about. But what they've done that's really hurting the show about Boba Fett is that they've given 2 of his episodes away to pretty big characters that the fandom has come to care about. Din Djarin, Ahsoka Tano, Grogu, Luke Skywalker, almost to a fault where it overshadows Boba Fett. And it's kind of hard to care about him and his story now at this point. Like, do I want to see a showdown with Cad Bane and Boba Fett? Absolutely. You know, I do. Like, I've been plugging for this since we first saw that unfinished reel from the Clone Wars panel back in 2017. But they haven't made that the focus. They haven't built that up and showed us, like, oh, Boba's had all of these traumatizing things that have happened to him in his past. He was constantly passed around from bounty hunter to bounty hunter. Here's the impact Django had on him. Here's the impact Cad Bane had on him. Maybe he wants revenge, and that will lead into his eventual duel with Bane on Tatooine, but they haven't built up the weight for that because the title of the show is the Book of Boba Fett. So where is the focus on Boba Fett? And that's not to say these last 2 episodes haven't been some of the best Star Wars ever. They are phenomenal. Yeah. I cannot praise them enough. They have some of the best effects, storytelling, cinematography of any Star Wars I've ever seen. Even the first 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett were good, but it's like they fell off a cliff, and they don't know what they're doing with their focus. But you get what I'm saying in the difference between Clone Wars Rebels and Book of Boba Fett. Book of Boba Fett implies one character. Yeah. Clone Wars and Rebels can be a much bigger story because you haven't limited it to one character. So I'd have to say that's my biggest critique thus far. And because of that, I'm kind of sad for Tamora Morrison and the character of Boba.
Yes, that's very, very well said, I think. The one thing I would say is, and the positive side of all this is, well, first let me start with the negative side of it, which I totally agree with you with. The negative side is that we had an opportunity to really develop Boba and give him more emotion and motivation behind who he is and what's driven him all this time, right? But instead, we got stuck on Tatooine with a couple subplots that there was some grains in there that were really good, but it didn't flesh out enough, I don't think. And then it kind of got derailed into what it is now, which is fine. The positive side of it is this is another show where we can kind of go to in the future and be like, oh, if someone else new is watching Star Wars, oh, you need those gaps filled in, go to this Clone Wars episode. If you need these gaps filled in, go to this Bad Batch episode. If you need these gaps filled in, go to Rebels. And then if you need some other gaps filled in and you want to see some awesome scenes, go to Book of Boba Fett. It's still a great season of Star Wars. I'm not mad about it at all. I'm happy with what we've gotten in terms of content so far, and the storytelling in the last 2 episodes has been awesome. I just don't think it's as good as it potentially could have been. I think they misstepped a little bit at the beginning, but that's fine. I think it's totally fine. I'm going to hold all my judgment until I put my stamp on it until this last episode and see what they bring here. It's going to be tough to fit all the stuff in that I would hope they'd fit in, but I think it'll still be really good. And my prediction was correct. I said the last 3 episodes are going to be the strongest of the season, and I am expecting next week to be almost as good, if not as good, as what we saw this week.
Yeah. So, and honestly, like at the end of the day, am I highly entertained? Yes. Has this been an interesting take on Star Wars storytelling? For sure. I'm not mad about anything that happened in the show. I'm just confused as to their direction. But this episode and last episode have been amazing, and I'm here for it. And I can't even describe the adrenaline rush this episode put me through. But do you have anything else you want to say? Because we do need to get into fan thoughts, and then we can do any theories before we get to our final verdict.
Yeah. Boy, we've been going a long time.
We really have
a lot to talk about.
This is not an episode that you can just like half-ass and explain.
No, I mean, there's a lot that happened here. And I think we talked about everything I wanted to talk about. Honestly, I thought everything was just done so well. It was just tied together so nicely. It just feels out of place. It just feels weird to have these 2 like standalone episodes, but I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it. It's great. So I think we summarized it all. Let's see what the fans have to say, if anything. I know we're kind of recording this quickly, but I don't know if we have a whole lot of questions. But did you post something on the Instagram?
No, but you definitely posted something on our community page.
Yeah, so let me see. There's only a couple comments here. We didn't give you guys a whole lot of time to write in, so that's our fault. I mean, I posted something a couple hours ago, but I can't expect people to have written in by then. So let's start with one. I think this is Hidden Scribbles, right? Ethan. Blue, blue, blue. What? How do you say that? Eth Sha 13. Whatever.
Yeah. Hidden Scribble.
Hidden Scribble says, after another amazing episode of the Book of Star Wars, well said, I'm more certain than ever that the Book of Boba Fett is getting a season 2. Favreau and Filoni are smart enough to realize that spending 2 full episodes out of 7 away from the main character of the series would be quite the mistake if there was only 1 season of the show. The Book of Boba Fett season 1 seems to be acting as our reintroduction to Boba Fett, filling in the gaps and developing his new character while also serving as a jumping point for other shows in the Mandoverse. I expect that the Book of Boba Fett Season 2 will stray much less from the main story and will see appearances of some exciting characters and organizations that we've anticipated from the start. And that is an excellent point. Hidden Scribbles, you always add so much, and I'm so happy you say this because you expressed it in a way that I was just trying to express it to Melissa a couple seconds ago, which is, you're right. I do think there'll be a season 2, and they'll really dive into this stuff more. So that's why I'm not mad about this first season at all. It's not like perfect, but we also talked about this a couple episodes ago, where it's the first season of the show. Like the first season of Mando was clunky too. The first season of any TV show, it starts off a little. They're getting their footing. They're feeling out how to do these things and feeling out the characters and whatnot. And I think you're right. Filoni and Favreau are smart enough to know that there's a lot to be told here. And so doing one season would be a disservice to both the character Boba and the Star Wars fans. So it's also a good money grab, if we're being honest. So I'd say do another season, and we can develop all these other little things here and there with a more linear timeline. And maybe some flashbacks here to Boba Fett and Cad Bane shoot off for the first time, and some other bounty hunters like Busk and Dengar and all that. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point. What do you think?
Hidden Scribble, I do want to give a shout out to Hidden Scribble. Hidden Scribble did say that Cad Bane was working for the Pikes in a question that was asked a few weeks ago from Hidden Scribble. So I just want to give a shout out to you, Hidden Scribble. You got that right on the nose. So good for you.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty safe to say this show will definitely get a second season. I really have a hard time thinking that they're going to cut it off. Like after that. Yeah, I think it's going to get a second season.
Yeah.
I can read another question that we have.
Sure.
Rain Foster says, such a perfect episode, but I'm still holding out hope that Kira and Crimson Dawn are going to be the mysterious villains in the finale. Ooh.
I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. I mean, we know Cad Bane is tied into them. Cad Bane doesn't tend to be the ringleader, but he always is associated with the naughty folks.
Yep.
Star Wars universe. So it's definitely I don't think he's the one in charge of everything. I think he's just there to kind of help enforce. He's the dark outlaw from the West to kind of like help keep order. So there will be a reveal. I totally agree with that. I think it could. I don't know who it's going to be. Kira, maybe Crimson Dawn. I think makes a lot more sense. I mean, obviously they're tied in together, but like, will she still be a part of that? I mean, a lot of time has passed, right? So I don't know, but it's definitely a possibility. I'll put anything on the table now.
Yeah, I would say Kira's very likely. I'd say she's probably the likeliest. So I would not discredit that at all.
Do you want to read another one? Though, even.
Well, I thought it was going to be. I thought Jennifer Beals was going to be on the bad guy side, and then they nuked her.
Yeah, they nuked her. Hopefully, first of all, Max Rebo was in there when they blew up that place.
No,
there will be hell to pay.
Was Max Rebo in there?
I don't know. That's what he's been in there for the last couple episodes. If they blew him to pieces, I will be furious. Just as furious as I was when the Sentinel droid, I forget its name, I'm too excited right now, shoots Grogu and blasts him. I was like, you don't touch my son. And then if they blew up Max Rebo, there will be hell to pay.
If you didn't see Max Rebo did not die. I'm sticking to that. If you didn't see him, he didn't die.
Right. But it's implied. But I'm just saying, it better not have happened.
I am a little sad. Matt will come after the Pikes if they killed Max Rebo.
Don't touch Max Rebo and don't touch my son Grogu. That's it.
I am a little depressed that they nuked Jennifer Beals. I was really hoping that she was going to be a baddie.
Yeah,
but
she's a good character, kind of.
I honestly thought they were going to give her more of a character, so I'm a little disappointed about that. But yeah, I think we're going to get a big reveal of the big bad for next week.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to read, or was that it?
I mean, there's one more. Edward the Giant says, I have only one thing to say. That was so danking wizard. And Dave fed us an amazing chapter. Yep, you're right, Edward the Giant. He really did. He knows how to give fan service while also staying true to what the story is and not rushing through things and not throwing things in there for the sake of throwing them in. He knows the Star Wars lore. He knows the storytelling aspects of it, how to pace the story, how to bring people in, how to take them out. And how to keep you on the edge of your seat and engaged throughout the whole episode. I mean, this one just flew by, and that's a sign of a really good episode. So yeah, I totally agree. I think masterfully done. I've said that about 100 times this episode, but that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, Dave knows what he's doing, and it's just good. It's just good to know that like you feel like he cares, because I really feel I really feel that in his Star Wars content. I really felt it with the Clone Wars finale. I just feel like he gets it and he cares about telling a good story. And like, that's just what I want from my content, is people who care and want to tell good human heartfelt stories. And that's what he does. And I just really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Do
a
you
lot
have
of
any
great,
other,
a lot of
go
great
ahead.
moments there. That's all I
Yeah.
was going to say.
Do you have any other questions or theories that you want to read? I'm sorry I didn't make an Instagram post today, but this recording just came up last second. So
That's okay. No, I think I'm good. I mean, if you guys have any other theories, leave them in the comments. I'd love to. I love reading those. I love seeing what people have to say. There's always some interesting stuff there. If there's anything we missed, let us know. I think we covered pretty much everything here, but we very well could have missed something. This was such a packed episode, and there's so much to unpack and talk about that I'm sure we missed a couple details here and there that might help set up the next episode. But let's just jump into our theories.
yeah.
What do you think is going to happen in this final episode and moving forward to other shows?
Ooh, well, one of the main things that came to mind is there was a lot of talk about emotional attachment and having to choose between the worlds of being a Mandalorian and being a Jedi. But as we saw in episode 5, it is possible to be both. You know, Tar Vizsla was the first Mandalorian Jedi, and we don't really know how much knowledge Luke has of that, if any at all. Or if Luke, you know, as a teacher is going to enforce one or the other, because at the end of the episode, Grogu is left with a choice. And by the way, might I say, a mighty unfair choice given his age. I mean, like, what, he's like still a baby, and Luke's like, here, pick your career in college, and you have to stick to this. Are you going to major in Mandalorian? Are you going to major in Jedi? And I thought that was like so unfair for Luke to do, but like, I get why they did it. You know, there's a lot of tension there. So I think a big, like, theorizing point is, what is going to be the fate of Grogu? Is it possible for him to be both Mandalorian and Jedi, or is he going to have to pick one over the other? Because, you know, like Luke says, Grogu's going to outlive Din, and that's going to be a painful thing for him. And so just like the choices there and what that could mean for Grogu's character, and even further to that, like Luke and his teaching methods and what he wants to enforce. Does he want to enforce the idea of love and it being good to love, or the idea that attachment can be dangerous and you need to let that go? So there's a lot of questions there. Like, what do you think? Do you have any theories on the whole, like, Tar Vizsla? Because they wouldn't bring that up unless there was some kind of connection, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think Grogu's going to leave. And I think,
Really?
yes, I think there's a possibility that he does become a Jedi anyways, or at least some type of force sensitive lightsaber user.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick though, we didn't talk about this yet, but Yoda's lightsaber, that's another thing, another
Oh,
cameo.
yeah.
Like, awesome. Like, just awesome. Nice little nugget thrown in there, right? And when I'm in my reaction video, you can see I'm like, oh, he doesn't have to make his own. I thought that was part of being like a Padawan. But I'm like, oh, that's Yoda's lightsaber. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. But I think he's going to choose Mando, because is Grogu even really interested in becoming a Jedi? No one has really asked him before this. You know, Mando just brought him there because he said he needs to be with his people, and he's a foundling, right? At the end of the day, that's what he was first. He was a foundling in Mandalorian culture. So, and I think Grogu really misses his father, me, and I think he's already had a lot of pain with the whole Jedi thing. Like, he did that for a while, right? And it wasn't very fruitful for him. It didn't really work out in a great way. And that does not to say he can't return to Luke and stuff, but I also think it helps explain him not being there when Kylo has his hissy fit. It means Grogu, you know, gets away. I'm really leaning towards Grogu's going to choose Mando. Also, Mando has that little pod in his new starfighter, which I do think like that's for Grogu. You know, they wouldn't have put that in there if he wasn't going to fly around with Mando. I don't think so. I personally think we're going to get more development with him. That he's going to be a definitely a recurring character in Mando season 3. I think that's another reason, is like he's going to have to be there. They're going to do more explanation with him in Order 66, how he got out. I hope. And I think Luke almost wants him to do that. You know, he's like, what am I going to do? You know, he clearly doesn't feel that invested in this, you know, and I don't think we're not getting a sense that he's super stoked on becoming a Jedi, right? So he's got to do what's right for him in the moment. And you're right, it's kind of an unfair choice to have, but I think that Grogu ultimately will end up choosing Mando, and that'll kind of set us up for Mando season 3. We're obviously going to have a great battle in the last episode of Book of Boba Fett here. So my other theories, we're going to have a showdown between Cad Bane and Boba. I think that's pretty obvious. We might see some more.
Before you get into that real quick, just on Grogu having the choice and whatnot, it is going to be interesting to see, like, I mean, the reason that Mando gave Grogu to Luke is because the Empire was after Grogu, and the Empire's not going to stop being after Grogu.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that's something else to keep in mind too. But I guess they were kind of addressing Grogu's choice as opposed to like the consequences of that choice. And I think that a lot of Mando season 3, hopefully, will include some parallels in Luke trying to figuring out his place as a teacher and what he wants to teach his students, and then Grogu's future as a Mandalorian Jedi, or maybe one or the other. So
yeah, I mean, this also opened up so many doors. The CGI was done so well with Luke. Are they going to have some kind of Luke TV show?
Yeah,
like, with a Jedi Academy and add some more characters in? Like, see, I don't know. There's so many threads you can go down with this, but I think more of the Empire side of things, not stopping going after Grogu, will kind of, their focus will shift. We'll see Thrawn obviously and Ahsoka. I have this strong feeling, maybe it's the Force, that Grogu is going to go with Mando, at least for the time being. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think I don't think they'd leave that kind of setup unless there was going to be some kind of dramatic choice, which is Grogu leaving in his cute little chainmail outfit.
Yeah,
so.
and I think that's kind of why they gave. First of all, like, they're not just gonna throw away the chainmail. Like with Yoda's lightsaber, it's an iconic thing. He didn't make one himself, but it's like we know it's there. Mando made that chainmail specifically for Grogu. We're gonna see that on him at some point, right? Which means that he's going to pick that, in my opinion. We already saw the training scene, which is that's fan service to show us what him and Luke have been up to, right? To show that's the scene we all wanted to see, is what happens when Grogu got taken by Luke at the end of Mando season 2. And so we saw that now, and I think that's kind of like, it feels very complete now. Like I don't need to really see more of what's happening with Luke for the time being. I think Luke, we probably won't see Luke again for a little while. Probably still Ahsoka, I would guess, or maybe for a little bit in this next episode, just to kind of put a bow on it or whatever. But I just think the way they've set everything up now, I think it's way more likely he goes and we see him in his cute little chainmail, his mithril, and
his mithril.
Kind of explore the Mandalorian aspect of things with the Darksaber and Mandalore and Grogu kind of growing up and maybe continuing to practice too. And you know, maybe even Ahsoka ends up helping out too. I don't know. Yeah.
There's a lot of different paths that they could go down.
But other theories.
I was going to say, let's talk about the Bane Boba showdown, because that's clearly happening in this episode. I hate saying this, but I think there is a possibility that Boba could kill Bane, as much as I would not want to see that, you know, because I think it would be a little bit crappy to introduce Cad Bane in the way that they did and then have Boba kill him without any weight to it or any build up to it. So what I'm hoping is going to happen is that they're going to have a duel and that Bane will get away and then they'll address it in season 2. But I also think it's kind of likely that they might have Boba kill him, which that would kind of make me mad. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I don't think they will. He's too good of a character, and he's too good of a protagonist or antagonist, for season 2 of Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want him to be the setup for the season 2 antagonist.
And I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to set him up for season 2. He'll be the bad guy in that one, because it's a good rivalry between the two of them. So I think you're right. They'll have a duel, but I think Bane or Boba will end up getting away, and that'll also tie into more Mando stuff, as well as Bad Batch. I think we're going to get Bad Batch will probably help fill in some of these holes too, weirdly enough, with Omega, which, by the way, I'm surprised we haven't gotten a mention of her or anything. That also could be how they end it. We haven't talked about her in a while, but I think they could also mention her next week. And then I think, I don't know that Boba will necessarily want to stay on Tatooine. I could be wrong. I don't know. I feel like he'll have maybe he'll have different motivations in the second season if there is one, which I think there will be. But either way, I think it's going to be a very strong ending. It's with some awesome action sequences and probably some more cameos from maybe some lesser characters, if not the same ones. Yeah.
And I wonder if they're going to bring this show back to Boba Fett at all. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they do. This show did not take the direction I thought it was going to take at all. In the best way, but also in kind of like, oh man, I kind of feel bad for Tamora Morrison. So, you know, I hope they can bring it back to Boba, maybe give him some more depth and more character and more reason to care about him. But the elements that we got in this episode were just fantastic. I cannot believe we got Luke and Ahsoka in the same scene, Luke training Grogu, callbacks to Order 66, callbacks to Yoda, and then we get Cad freaking Bane at the end of the episode. And this is all within the same story.
Yeah.
So I could not have imagined this episode in my wildest dreams, and it hit all the right notes for me, and I feel very fulfilled as a Star Wars fan. But with all that in mind, I guess we can get into our episode rating if you want to.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
The one final thing I'll say is it did feel like they did a 180 in the middle of the season, and are like, all right, we're switching. The fans, they like it, but they don't love it so much. So let's just make it all amazing now from here on out. I feel like they.
Yeah, but they had to do that like pre-production. Like
I
they had to
know, but
write
I'm just saying that's how much of a switch it felt like.
Yeah,
but I'm here for it. I love it. It's great.
I love it. Is it weird?
Storytelling. I don't care. Is it weird? And does it not make a whole lot of sense being in the Book of Boba Fett? Sure, but I don't give a shit, to be honest. Just keep making good content and bringing us the characters that we love and telling good stories. So, with that being said, my verdict, going the highest I've gone so far with Book of Boba Fett, 9.6.
Oh.
Big rating from your boy. 9.6, that's huge on my scale. Going above 8 means it's like great episode. Going to 9 means like one of the best episodes like maybe ever of TV. And like I think Mando season 2 finale was like a 9.8-ish. But this was just fantastic in so many different ways. And this is one of those episodes I could go back and watch and watch and watch. And I probably will. So that's my rating. What about you?
I was going to say 9.5, 9.5, 9.6, but I'd probably give it around the same rating. I mean, like the only reason you dock any points on these episodes is because of the Boba Fett thing. I mean, like you called it the show of Book of Boba Fett. Where's Boba Fett? If he's making cameos in his own show, I think that's a bit of a problem, but was it still a great piece of Star Wars storytelling, masterfully produced and crafted with a whole lot of love? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw, but Tracy Canobio, the publicist at Lucasfilm, tweeted last night. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, she said, there's no other way to describe this episode than beautiful. And I think that perfectly surmises it. I think it was beautiful. And I think it was really a testament to Dave Filoni's journey in Star Wars and what he's brought to the table and how he's really influenced modern Star Wars to this day. Like the reason we have what we have is because of Dave Filoni's collaboration with George Lucas. Like he brought those stories to life and really did a phenomenal job. And because of that, we have all these incredible stories. So yeah, 9.5, 9.6 would be my rating. And we will continue to watch Dave Filoni's career with great interest.
Always. And that's very well said. And that's a perfect note to end it all on. Amazing episode. So happy for it. So happy about it, rather. We will be back next week to watch the season finale of Book of Boba Fett. I can't believe it's already here. So stay tuned and watch it with us. Drop us a comment. Tell us what you guys thought about the episode. Go to our Instagram or Twitter. Follow us at @star_wars_pod. Subscribe to our YouTube too and click the bell so you're notified of when our videos come out. Check out our reaction videos too. I think it's probably our 2 best ones we've done yet. I was shocked. I don't really get I don't show a lot of shock physically when I'm shocked. I just can't speak and can't talk. But this one there's so much happening that I'm I lose my mind. So go check those out. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, videos on Spotify too. So if you like watching video on Spotify, do that. And leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It really boosts us up in the ratings. Please leave us a comment if you guys enjoy it. And share it with your friends. And keep participating with us because we love hearing what you guys have to say. I really do enjoy reading those comments. We don't respond to every single one, but we try because they're great and they're super thoughtful. And we're growing this. It's growing a lot, and we're going to keep growing it. So we appreciate the support from you guys, and we'll see you next week for the finale of the Book of Boba Fett, episode 7. See you guys next time.
And don't forget, the Force will be with you always.
All right. See you guys next week.
See you guys.